It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the certified financial planners on the program. And with me in the KFG studios, my business partners and fellow CFPs, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
Would it ever make sense to do a Roth conversion in the 22 or even the 24% tax bracket? And so in what situations would you take advantage of that opportunity, and when would you let that opportunity pass? We're going to answer that question and more this hour of the Wise Money Show.
That's right. We've got a lot of questions teed up, and this one, this is interesting. We're going to get into it. There's a couple different angles. Of course, we're going to see that. So, but we'd love to hear from you. If you've got a question, we would love to help. If you have any needs, our team can help as well. You can call or text us, 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyshow.com is where you can find us. You can leave questions right there as well. There's a question submit section, and then all over social media where most people leave questions on the YouTube channel, but wherever you're at, we are there as well. Search the Wise Money Show. And that's where this one came from. On YouTube, we get a lot of questions through the YouTube channel, and I did have to put the name in there. Josh caught it immediately from Kaiser Soze. Spelled it a little bit differently. And if you're a movie fan, Usual Suspects, that's a great movie. It's Benicio del Toro, before he was like
famous and everything.
Yeah, and he was good. All right, so here's what Kaiser Soze said, and it's more of a comment and could be a critique, but it's really good to wade into. Have a lot of respect for your channel. Thank you, appreciate that. But you and other CFPs always use the 12% tax bracket in your projections. If you've accumulated a seven-figure 401k, it's highly unlikely you'll be able to stay in the 12% tax bracket. Why not show some examples of a 22% tax bracket Roth conversion? And there's a few different layers to this, but I'll take the bait. I want to open it up and let's talk about the times when you would convert in the 22 and 24% tax bracket. I feel like I was just telling a story. I'll share it again. And so I do think we covered that a decent amount, but to punctuate, what are the times? But I'd also want to dive into the premise that if you've got a seven-figure portfolio, you're not going to be able to stay in the 12% tax bracket. I would actually disagree with that. We see that not true quite a bit. So, guys, where do you want to wade in? How should we start?
Well, I know you just said we're going to take the bait, but part of the reason why we do often talk about this, and we're quick to say if you're in the 10% bracket or you're in the 12% bracket, then you've got to be considering a Roth conversion. That's because for a lot of those people, it's as close to a no-brainer as you're maybe going to get. It's just more clear-cut. When you start getting into higher and higher tax brackets, it doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. It just means you need to be really intentional and careful about deciding from year to year, does this make sense in my particular situation? For many people, if they were being honest, they would say, I don't know what tax bracket I'm in. And boy, I ask people that often who are very sophisticated financially. And it's hard to keep track of, well, first of all, the brackets are constantly changing. The dollar amount that it takes to get into a higher bracket is shifting every single year. We've got constant new laws that are coming out. And a lot of people, if I knew at tax filing time which bracket I'm in, that's great, but I'm not going to keep that in my mind the rest of the year. So I would want you to be able to answer that question first. Do you know what tax bracket you are in if you do nothing? Do you know what tax bracket you will be in if you do a Roth conversion? How much room do you have in that tax bracket, and how high could you go? But now we have to go even further, and this is why this is a financial planning question that we're getting. Do you have a philosophy or a belief or a projection on where you think you'll be in retirement when it's time to spend this money? And this is why, Mike, you say, well, no, we see all the time where there are people who it does make sense for them to convert in a higher bracket. we also see people with massive retirement portfolios who can stay in surprisingly low tax brackets out in retirement. The point is, your situation is your situation. And your certified financial planner will help you to forecast where do we think you might be out there in retirement. And if you can play some tax arbitrage, as we might say in a nerdy way, if you think you can pay some tax now at a lower rate and avoid it at a higher rate in the future, it doesn't matter what tax bracket you're in. It can make some financial sense for you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Kevin, that sort of aligns to the banter we were having before the show. Like, hey, there are a lot of people. So Josh shared in the 10 and 12% tax bracket, it's almost like it's a no-brainer. And there's so many people that are in those tax brackets in retirement that it's easy to focus on that area, even though there's plenty of examples and times when you'd convert in the 22 and 24% bracket.
That's true, but oftentimes when you're talking to people and the no-brainer is to pay more taxes,
you get the hairy eyeball.
Is that a no-brainer?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, no, and so you look at that and you have a few windows of time. So the time when I'm working, the time when I'm not working and I haven't yet drawn Social Security, the time when I've drawn Social Security and I don't yet have to do my required minimum distributions. So in these various windows, the approach would likely be different.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And so this is again where I have to have a plan, and my mind can't get away from the. Again, we serve many families who are taking generational wealth and passing it down. And so it's an interesting concept, and generational wealth means different things to different people.
Yeah,
that could mean when Grandpa dies, one of the grandkids is going to get a car, and that's a really cool thing. That could mean Grandpa made his grandchildren millionaires before they were born. And so, there are different approaches to how you would do this, but this is where I would want to be dialed in. Again, there's this clarion call for tax planning, and I would want to know, what am I going to be paying in taxes today, and what am I going to be paying, really planning out the rest of my life. Now, no one knows. Tomorrow's not guaranteed, but if I did live to my life expectancy, who would I want to pay the taxes? Yeah. And I can't tell you how amazing it is to work with children. And I'm thinking of the family that you still serve, Mike, where the children came in and they said, okay, what do we do? And most of the IRA money had been converted to Roth money and had been growing for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And they were surprised that they didn't have to pay taxes on it.
You're going into one of the reasons, and I want to go there. But one last comment before we get into the times when you would definitely convert in the 22 and 24% tax bracket is simply because the 12 to 22% tax bracket, that's a 10% increase. And so if you do find yourself in the 12% tax bracket, you definitely want to jump on that, because the jump to 22%, that's a 10% increase. When you're in 22 and 24%, I don't know, that 2% difference is not a big one.
But Mike, this is why we don't do math on the radio, because from 12% to 22% is almost 100%.
Right.
So it sounds like, 10%.
You're almost doubling your tax rate.
Right, because 10% doesn't sound bad. 100% sounds, well, it depends on the context. 100%, if I'm talking about a return on my stock, then I'm excited. If it's the increase in my tax rate, I'm not.
Okay, so let's get into the circumstances, the times when it definitely would make sense to convert 22 and 24 and in those brackets. Kevin, let's pick back up the one that you were sort of insinuating, and that is, well, someone's going to pay tax on this money. And if you are not going to be spending this money during your lifetime and your kids then will inherit it, they've got 10 years to withdraw the dollars. And if that happens when they're in their working years, this may push them into the 32% tax bracket, or tax rates could be even higher. So doing a Roth conversion in the 22 or 24% for you could help avoid a higher tax, an even higher tax bracket when your kids inherit the dollars out there in the future. So estate planning reasons is one.
Right, especially if you're going to let that money grow. If you're going to let it ebb and flow with the stock market over the long term, you should see some pretty amazing results. So if you're going to convert it and then put the pedal to the metal and say this is money that the kids are going to get, and again, if the kids are in their peak earning years and they inherit a bunch of traditional IRA dollars that have never had any taxes paid, it's not going to be great for them to layer another $100,000 a year onto their income.
And especially over the 10-year rule that is now in effect. So that's one of the examples. We're going to dive a little bit deeper in that. But what are the other times when converting in the 22 and 24% tax rates that makes a lot of sense? We've got that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show. What you're watching right now is a weekly 1-hour talk show that airs right here on this channel every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time, and also on podcast at the same time, and also on a couple of local radio stations at the same time as well, which is why the content's structured the way that it is, and it's long form, and there's banter and back and forth and bickering at times, but it creates entertainment. But if you are looking for more concentrated content, shorter, direct to the point, and maybe on different diverse topics, yep, we've got that for you right here as well. Next Wise Step videos, 5 of them a week, as well as shorts, reels, and all that sort of stuff right here for you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you're made aware every time we drop new content. If you like the content, thank you very much. No bonus content on this one. Let's recalibrate, and then we'll get to bonus content next time.
Yeah.
So, okay, I thought that was helpful. And so now, like, getting into circumstances, if there's more with estate planning or the 10-year rule, we can talk about that. Or if we just want to get into others, I'm open.
You mean other questions?
No.
Oh.
Other times when it would make sense to convert in the 22 and 24.
That's where we'd be going.
Okay. All right, here we go. If you're in the 22 or 24% tax bracket, does it ever make sense to do Roth conversions? Absolutely. It certainly could. And but what are those times? When are the circumstances ripe for you to do that? Working with your CFP, they'll be able to help. We're talking about that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Stay up to date on all Wise Money content. Find us online, wisemoneyshow.com. And then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Search the Wise Money Show. Talking about times when it would make sense to do a Roth conversion in the 22 and 24% tax brackets. I think there's a lot of those times, and one of them is for estate planning reasons. If you've done the math, you've built out your 5-factor retirement plan. In fact, the question where this came from, individuals references a 7-figure 401k. If you've done the math and say, I'm not going to spend all this money in my lifetime, and then you've got to. Your planning has to stretch, your tax planning has to stretch just from this year to multiple years. And then it even needs to stretch to multiple generations. Mm-hmm. And it's in those circumstances where you'd say, well, I'm in the 24% tax bracket, but I know my kids are in the 24% tax bracket right now as well, or I have to assume that they are. And therefore, let me pay the tax right now at the 24% rate so that all the growth from here on out will be tax-free. And when they withdraw, it won't push them into the next tax bracket. So
that's exactly right. It's the same analysis that you do for your own lifetime. If I can pay tax at one rate today and avoid it at a higher rate in the future, great. Or if we think multi-generationally, if I can pay tax at a rate today and my kids or grandkids avoid it at a higher rate out there in the future, that's a win as well.
Yeah.
And a very powerful one because of what you just said. As soon as we get the money out of the IRA and into the Roth, all the growth that happens from that day moving forward is tax-free. Yep. And that's one of the reasons why a circumstance that might trigger you to do a Roth conversion or seriously consider it, even if you're in a relatively high bracket, or you think, let's pretend for a moment that you're in the 24% bracket today and you really expect that you will be in the 24% bracket forever in the future. There's no tax arbitrage there. There's no like pay a little today and avoid a lot tomorrow because the tax bill would be the same. But when the market takes a dip, sometimes a market decline can create an opportunistic Roth conversion scenario for you, where you can convert those dollars while they're temporarily squashed down, get them over into the Roth, and when they rebound, they're rebounding now in a tax-free environment. You get a nice pop in a better situation. All that growth that returns to the portfolio is now tax-free, whereas when it stayed in the traditional IRA, the IOU to the government is bouncing back with the account balance.
Yep, completely agree. I want to go to the inverse of the first example, the first circumstance that we gave, and that is if you think you're going to be leaving an inheritance, it may make sense for you to do Roth conversions in the 24% tax bracket right now if you believe you're going to be receiving an inheritance, right? So depending on what age you are right now, my folks are in their late 70s, and one can just draw some conclusions. Even if you don't know much about their financial life, you know yours. You have a vision of how long you're going to work. You know your tax situation, and you can conclude, hey, if I received some inheritance and it was if it was taxable and I needed to draw it out within 10 years and I was required to take a distribution every single year, what tax bracket would that put me in? And therefore, should I start converting some of my own dollars right now so that if and when that happens, I've got more dollars of my own on my own balance sheet growing tax-free?
Yeah, this became more important when the ability to stretch out that inherited IRA over the rest of your lifetime really went away. The fact that there's now a 10-year rule that says any money that you're inheriting from your parents or grandparents' IRA, you have to distribute that over a 10-year period. That could be a lot of extra income landing on your tax return. And if that's happening as you are doing your own required minimum distributions, or you are planning on taking some cash out of your own investments, that can start doubling up or pushing you into higher brackets than you ever anticipated. One way to help neutralize that, as you said, Mike, is dealing with the tax bill that's attached to your retirement accounts, dealing with it proactively now, so that you're in a position to be able to handle those 10-year distributions down the road.
Yep. I was thinking we'd start, if I were to rank the reasons, this would have been my first reason why it would make sense to do a Roth conversion in the 24% tax bracket. And this is predicated on you doing that planning, that long-term retirement planning, projecting out, okay, where do I think my income would be? Because if you look out there in retirement and you are confident you're going to be in the 10% tax bracket, I'd be surprised. But if you were confident, you probably there wouldn't be many circumstances where you'd do a Roth conversion in 22 or 24. But if you thought it was going to be close, if you're married, planning for potentially being suddenly single, the likelihood that one of you passes away of old age and the other one passes away right after that of a broken heart can happen. Happened with my grandparents, but it assume that that's not going to happen. And that can influence your planning. I remember there was a circumstance, I was meeting with some individuals that were in the 22% tax bracket, and we were talking about doing a Roth conversion, even though there could be a pocket of time before they started IRA withdrawals in retirement where they could have been in a much lower tax bracket. And so I asked a few of our other great CFPs, Amy Masters, Taylor Rhoda, and said, okay, would you do a Roth conversion here in the 22%? And Amy said, I would do a Roth conversion in 24%. And I would not only fill up the 24% tax bracket, but I would then take advantage of Roth conversions during that lull in a couple of years before he starts drawing out of the IRA. And I said, okay, what are the reasons? And she said, in case one of them is single. Actually, one of them has had significant health issues. And so even though they were in their 60s, planning as if, well, what happens if you're at a single tax bracket at some point and single tax rates? Absolutely doing a conversion in the 22 and 24% bracket.
Well, there's another thing. If you're playing 3D chess and you're looking out, and we have lots of clients who are, when they hop onto Medicare, they're hopping off their company plan, hopping onto Medicare, and they're going to pay over $1,000 a month per person, so if I'm a couple, I'm paying $24,000 a month, a
year.
year. I'm sorry, a year for Medicare because of IRMA. And if there's a way to change the character and the nature of my income and how much of it is taxable in retirement, it might make sense to get a jump on that. And but some folks over their lifetime accumulate, reinvest, accumulate, and that train gets so much momentum, they're never going to get their income below their household income below $500,000.
Yeah.
And so they're never going to get out of the nasty IRMA brackets.
And that's the reason why you may consider doing Roth conversions still during your working career, so you can get out in front of that. You could get more balance between your Roth dollars and your traditional dollars. Otherwise, as you're kind of alluding to, Kevin, you could get to a point where there's just so much in those traditional accounts that you couldn't possibly convert enough to be able to truly move the needle on avoiding IRMA penalties or just falling into a higher and higher tax bracket out there in retirement.
Yep. What if you have other highly appreciated assets? So things like a couple rental homes, a business that in the future could create some lumpy tax years for a few years. That alone could push you into higher tax brackets. And you might say, well, let's take advantage of at least what we know today with these tax brackets. And if there is an eventual business sale or I sell these properties out there in the future and that creates a few big windfall years, that I at least have these dollars that I've paid tax at the 22 or 24% tax bracket that are growing tax-free.
Exactly. And the Roth may prove to be almost an emergency fund in some of those years where you don't want to take an expensive year and then have an emergency of some sort where you have to pull additional dollars out of an account and put yourself into a higher tax bracket than you even anticipated. The Roth is a pool of money that you can go to. It's one of the only sources of income you might have in retirement that's tax-free for you.
Yeah. All right, so there are a lot of reasons, a lot of times when you would want to do a Roth conversion in the 24% tax bracket, 22% tax bracket. Depends on your specific and unique financial situation. There's another side to this question, though, and that is if you have a 7-figure portfolio, could you even stay in the 12% tax bracket? We're going to dive into that and more questions from fans of the show. That and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Yeah, you could until you can't.
Yeah.
But Amy is so right, and there are many things I love about Amy and Taylor. You called her Taylor Rhoda?
I know.
I can't remember. Do you know? Well, the lovely
she recently got married. That's what we're.
The lovely and gracious Taylor just got married, and yeah, so
impossible.
Yep. So we'll get that name right on the next show, but that is the thinking that needs to be applied. Because when you're a couple and how we live, how we even survive is we take what our current situation and project it forward. And that's why you need someone else looking into the situation saying, yeah, but if we're projecting forward just one of you, your tax rates just doubled.
Right.
So anyway.
Okay.
Right.
Bonus content
here.
here.
Oh, boy. Let's go.
What's the biggest mistake you see people make when they get a big tax refund?
Well, spend it or, all of a sudden have new ideas in their financial life that they had not previously set as goals or anything. It's like unexpected money is unaccountable money for a lot of people. Like, all right, we didn't know we were going to have this, so let's go get that new TV or let's take that vacation or whatever, instead of saying, hey, this is a return of money that we would have otherwise, hopefully, done something really smart with throughout the year, but we're getting it in a chunk instead of spread out through all of our paychecks. And we just treat the chunk differently than we would have a bite-sized piece every pay period. And so to me, the better approach is to say, okay, what is our top goal that we were making progress towards, and now we can make even more progress towards it instead of inventing new ideas all of a sudden?
Yeah, it's a resource allocation question, and a lot of times that money, I've got a $5,000 return coming, and I get so excited, and I tell my wife, and then that money gets spent 3 times.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
That is so easy.
Okay. All right. So then here's the obtuse answer. One of the biggest mistakes that they can make is to pay it forward to their next year's taxes if their tax situation is going to change. Because if my tax situation is I'm going to make more money and I'm going to need to pay more taxes, and this helps me either with my estimates or just to get the freight paid on the income that I'm going to have for the current year, good. That's a good idea. Even though you're letting that sit in the government's coffers instead of yours. But if your financial situation is changing dramatically, and I've seen this, a lot of times there's the heat of the moment, and the question is, well, what's going on? What do you want to do with that money? Look, we're just going to pay it forward till next year, but next year isn't going to look like last year.
Yeah.
And so this is where you want tax planning.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right, here we go. We'll touch a little bit on that second side of that question, and then we'll get into the next question where people are probably over this. Here we go. If you have saved up a 7-figure portfolio, so you've got more than $1 million saved up, is it possible to stay in the 12% tax bracket? I'm going to say yes. Might be difficult and certainly will require some planning. We're helping with that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name's Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast. Wherever you listen, just search the Wise Money Show. Subscribe to it there. Rate the program there as well. We appreciate it. Still hitting the question here from Kaiser Sose on the YouTube channel. And actually, we're not hitting his question anymore. We're hitting the question behind the question because he said, well, what are some examples sometimes when you'd want to do a Roth conversion in the 24% tax bracket? Because he said, with a 7-figure portfolio, you're not going to be able to stay in the 12% bracket. And I think you could. I think you could. Okay. The 2026 tax brackets came out, married filing jointly. And obviously, it's going to be harder for a single filer, okay? And we can share those as well. But married filing jointly, the top of the 12% tax bracket is $100,800. But that's the top of the tax bracket. That's after your deductions. And standard deductions, $30,000. And so, and I'm rounding there, guys. It's not exactly. I don't have it right at my fingertips. So you've got $130,000 of income that can land on your tax return and still stay in the 12% tax bracket. If you've got $1 million portfolio in retirement, you've got your Social Security, which some of it is tax advantaged. Maximum of 85 cents of every dollar of Social Security is going to land on your tax return. So you've got that. Plus, let's just assume a 4% withdrawal rate if it's all pre-tax. I think there's a pretty decent runway of 12% tax bracket there. Could be wrong. Circumstances, right? If you've got a pension and Social Security, if you are single, right, that's going to be very different. The single tax bracket, just divide that by 2. The top of the 12% tax bracket is $50,400. I'm going to say that's very, very unlikely that that you might be in the 12% tax bracket. You're not going to stay in the 12% tax bracket, like Kevin said.
I think this all also boils down to what is the nature of the income that you have coming in?
Yeah.
And what's the structure of your portfolio? If that was all IRA money and we're forecasting what are your required minimum distributions going to be when you reach age 73, on a 7-figure portfolio, it's a massive amount that the government wants you or requires that you pull out. And it's right. You might find yourself in a higher and higher tax bracket just because you're complying with the government's rules. But if that same portfolio was not held in an IRA, it was a mix of Roth, IRA, and maybe some trust accounts or traditional or taxable investments, you may have enough variety in the way that you have that the income coming into you or counting on your tax return that sometimes it can be surprising how low someone can stay in the tax brackets or keep their income on the tax return low enough that they're not getting clobbered by taxes as much as they might anticipate.
Yeah. So the point is, again, do the planning work, do the proactive planning work, build out that 5-factor retirement plan, stretch that out based on current growth rates, how you have it project, or how you have the dollars invested, what your tax picture is, what your other sources of income are, and you're able to get a lot of clarity. Will reality turn out exactly that way? Absolutely not. But it will give you a picture. It will give you a picture, and that will help inform decisions, wise decisions you can make right now. All right. Next question here is from David. And I don't think we've ever hit this circumstance in the 11 years of the Wise Money Show. And David needs some help. So it's a fantastic question. I've watched many, many videos pertaining to the earnings test for Social Security and haven't seen this specific situation clarified. If I fill out my application for Social Security to begin in January, can I work the first part of the year until the earnings test is met, and then take off and not work again until the next January and kind of earn up to that limit again? That's what I want to do. I just don't want to get penalized for my Social Security by doing that. So, okay, a lot of moving pieces here. Let's at least set the table. If you're drawing Social Security before your full retirement age, and that's an actually defined age, let's call it 67.
Based on the year that you were born.
Let's call it 67. That's what it is for most people right now. If you're going to collect your Social Security before your full retirement age, before 67, and still work, can you do so? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can earn as much as you want. It's just earning more than a certain amount. And what is that number in 2025?
$22,320 to be precise.
So that I'm actually saying on Social Security, the $23,400 for 2025.
Okay, we don't do math on the radio.
Got it.
It's 22 grand.
Okay, so for Social Security, if you earn more than that, then they start penalizing some of your Social Security. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's paycheck money that you're earning. It's not pension. It's not dividend, whatever. It's paycheck money. Once you turn your full retirement age, 67, you can earn as much as you want. That limit no longer applies. So that's setting the table that pertains to what David's asking.
And the whole reason we care about the limit is because essentially Social Security starts to reduce your benefit $1 for every $2 that you earn above that limit. So you can start to see your Social Security shrinking because your paycheck turns out to be bigger than what you thought it might be. We've seen this happen. Some people will have kind of a side hustle or a small business. They're kind of self-employed, and income can rise and fall from year to year. And what started out as just mostly a hobby suddenly just grows like gangbusters, and they're making more money than they ever realized. And all of a sudden, they're having to pay back some of their Social Security benefits, seeing that reduction, and they never saw it coming.
Yeah, I mean, the common scenario there, Josh, is people have this idea of what retirement's going to look like. They retire, start drawing Social Security, and then they're talking, having coffee with their buddies that they used to work with, and they're like, "Hey, we could use some help. Could you come back as a consultant?" And they say, "Okay, well, yeah. I'll come back 1 day a week." And then before you know it, they're doing 3 days a week, and they're enjoying it,
right?
So because the sock drawer is already organized, the ties are completely and lined up where they're supposed to be, and they have played enough rounds of golf where they want to do something else.
All right, so let's get to the question then. Can you earn all of that up front, like right away in the first month, 2 months, and then be done? Okay. It changes. The rules are different in the first year that you turn on Social Security. In the first year that you turn on Social Security, it turns into a monthly number.
Because for most people, that's going to be a partial calendar year.
Yeah. So in your question, David, you're saying, well, what if I turn my Social Security on in January? Well, what if you wanted to retire in November and turn on your Social Security right away? If this earnings test wasn't different in the year you start your Social Security, then no one would turn their Social Security on, right? Because, I've already worked most of the year and I've made 60 grand. I'm going to start my Social Security. It's all going to be penalized away. Why would I do that? So the year you start your Social Security, it turns into a monthly number. So call it around 2 grand a month, and you're going to want to be precise. That's the year that you start. Every other year after that, up until the year before you turn your full retirement age, or the year you turn your full retirement age, then you could do that. you could. The earnings test is no longer a monthly test. It's an annual test.
Annual amount, right.
So
and the exception being also when you reach full retirement age, that also has a different calculation. The penalty is not nearly as big.
Yeah.
I said it was you lose $1 for every 2 that you go over, and that number drops to $1 for every 3 that you go over, and it's a higher threshold as well. So everything gets better in that year that you reach full retirement age.
Yep.
And the question we often get is, well, if I'm getting some of my Social Security reduced, or I have to give it back, should I just stop working? And I say, no, work and give back a few of those dollars. You're still far ahead financially. And for 2025, 2 places I'm looking say it's $23,400.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So here's the question then. Hopefully that helps, David. And if you're not yet in that situation, but you're planning with retirement and you're thinking, well, when will I draw Social Security? Will I draw it right away? What if I go back to work? Have those discussions with your certified financial planner. There's one individual that we've been serving for a long time, and he just turned on his Social Security this year. But I would ask him every single year, is there a chance you're going to go back to work? Because he loves what he does, and they really appreciate him. And so there's been this like, hey, are you sure? Even if you get bored, even if they really say, yeah, we really want you back, are you going to go back to work? You're going to want to know that. Work with your certified financial planner. That can help inform when you turn on your Social Security. So, all right, we've got more questions from fans of the show. That more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. All right. Did you get bit by ChatGPT?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Dude.
I just said, are you sure it's 22,000? No, it's not 22,320. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, dude.
It's actually 23,400.
So this is...
You got me.
Okay, so fans of the Wise Money Show, if you're watching this bonus content, I've been thinking of doing a video or a few videos on the mistakes that ChatGPT and AI make when it comes to finances, and we've had a couple of them already this morning. So that's one. The other one, talking about Roth conversions. It said you want to do a Roth conversion this year before all the tax laws change in 2026. And it's like, nope, they're not changing in 2026, even though this is the latest version. Yeah. And so you got to be careful.
So I looked at the Social Security earnings test limit, and it said it was 22,320 for 24, and the 25 numbers are still pending. And I knew that was wrong.
Right.
And so I said, what is the earnings test for Social Security for before full retirement age in 2025? And it came back and gave me 23.4. And then I Googled it and got 23.4.
Yeah.
So
I was going to point out here. It's all good.
So, I know, but it's not all good, because if you don't know the answer you're looking for, you would stop and say, oh, well, we must not have the numbers for 2025, which is ludicrous.
All right. So next question from Randy, and then another question from a David. These are two common. The first one's not very common. No bonus content on this one, Lindsay. We can recalibrate on the approach, but I'm just feeling what time it is. Yeah. Okay. All right. Here we go. 4 segment. It better be. My goodness. Here we go.
Come on.
Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on the YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there, turn on notifications so you're aware every time we drop new content. There's a lot of content there, not only just these talk shows, but other videos and reels and shorts and all that sort of stuff is right there on the YouTube channel. So go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there. All right, hitting questions from fans of the show. The next question here is from Randy. This one is fairly unique. I have set aside deferred compensation for maybe 6 or 7 years now, and I'm going to be retiring in the upcoming June. Hey, congratulations. Hopefully you've been doing planning and you've got great confidence in your plan. When I received my deferred compensation, can I use that to fund an HSA and put it into a retirement account? Those are not the same thing, actually. The rules will be different with HSA and retirement account. But this is I think it's a common question, even though deferred comp is, I would say, not so common. But because I deferred my compensation, when I draw it out, is it treated as compensation? Is it treated as earned income that would allow me to make a contribution to a Roth IRA or something like that? And generally that answer is no, right?
Right, but as you said, HSA follows different rules, right?
That's right.
What we don't know is Randy's age. If he's retiring in his late 50s or early 60s, maybe you're going off of a group health insurance plan and onto a marketplace plan. And we would have to ask the question, well, is that a qualified high deductible health insurance plan? Is it HSA eligible? So you have to have the right type of insurance, health insurance in place in order to be able to make a contribution to the HSA. The nice thing is, though, you don't necessarily have to have earned income like we always talk about with an IRA or a Roth contribution or any type of retirement account contribution, right?
Okay, so retirement account. You keep using that word, and I do not think it means what you think it means.
Okay.
The quote.
Go. What are you saying?
No, who's the quote from?
I have no idea.
Okay, The Princess Bride. I'm sorry. No. This is
You lost me.
I'm sorry. No.
Most confusing moment. In
No.
history.
But here's the thing: we keep using these words or these terms, and they have all these different meanings.
Sure.
So when I look at this, I would say, Randy, make sure you're working with your financial planner, because when you say retirement account, what are you talking about? Are you talking about your 401k at work? Well, look, if you're working until June of next year, I would encourage you to fully fund your retirement account and
get it done in the first half of the year if you can.
Yes. Put if you have the resources, put 100% of your income in until you've reached the bucket. And it's a pretty decent sized bucket depending on how old you are.
Yep.
I'm assuming you're 50 plus, so that's probably 30,000 plus. If you're in the special 60 to 63 age range, you get a little bump there. It's all ridiculous. It's just how it works. So I'd say fill that up in the first 6 months. Because when you say retirement plan, is it the salary deferred retirement plan that I have through work? Or are you talking about either a traditional or Roth IRA that you can fund?
As an individual, outside of work.
Outside of that. Now, in order to fund that outside of work, you just have to have earned income. Mm-hmm. If you were retiring in January, it'd be a totally different story than if you're retiring in June, because I'm assuming if you're retiring in June, you'll have earned income that we can work with. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to have a decent-sized taxable event from your deferred comp getting kicked out of the plan, you probably want to fund an HSA.
Yeah, that's probably his motivation, right? Like he's recognizing, I'm going to have some big income coming out of this deferred comp. What are my tax planning strategies after retirement?
Right. And if we're doing detective work, we would say he's likely not signed up for Social Security and not signing up for Social Security before the end of the year, because if he does sign up for Social Security, he's not eligible to do the HSA.
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you're enrolled in Medicare Part A or B, you lose your eligibility to contribute that day moving forward, right?
Yeah. All right.
It's a lot of potential gotchas there.
But Kevin, I mean, you just despite I don't think there's going to be a rule. You can't quote movies and on a radio show. No math on the radio show. No movie quotes on the radio show.
Wait a minute, you were just talking about unusual characters or whatever. that.
But I didn't do a movie quote. Okay, but it's a fantastic point with, well, if you're retiring in June, you're going to have a whole bunch of earned income, even though the deferred comp is strange in that, well, yeah, I am deferring my compensation, but when it's paid out to me, it's taxed as ordinary income, but it doesn't meet the earnings test as earned income for funding a retirement account. I'm going to jump to another question from another David, and it's a very similar situation. I've got a question. I retired this year. My last day was January 4th, but I got some holiday pay and I got some vacation pay later coming in January of 2025. If I don't work anymore this year, can I make a contribution to a traditional IRA? Yes. And then this is also another weird one. And people ask this question and say, well, I worked last calendar year. And it was unused PTO or whatever from last calendar year, but it got paid out to me this calendar year. Does it count? Sometimes people say, well, what year is it taxed? All taxpayers, although I heard that you can even fight this a little bit and maybe win, I don't know, are on a cash basis. So when did you receive the cash? If it was paid out to you on a paycheck in 2025, even though really you were working, it was hours you worked in 2024, if it's paid out to you in 2025, it's 2025 income. And so, yeah.
So therefore, you can check the box saying, I had earned income in the year 2025, which means I'm eligible to make a contribution to an IRA for 2025. Even if it comes months after the fact, it could come in early 2026, you can be making that contribution ultimately for the prior year.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, so where would we point David to check? I would point him to look at your paycheck stub because it's going to tell you what your earnings are for this year.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you've got earnings, that's the test, right?
Yeah.
So what is the earnings, and whatever my earnings are, I can put 100% of that up to given limits into various types of plans.
And if you wanted to double and triple check, you could even talk to the payroll folks and say, hey, can you tell me what my W-2 is going to show this year? How much income is going to show up on that W-2 that they send to you in January of 2026 for 2025?
Or you could wait until January of 2026, get the actual document, and then you know for sure, and you can put that exact amount in.
Yep. Some of those details were in the question, and I just want to double click on it because Kevin, you mentioned it, and that is he referenced that the entire amount of this income was about $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people think, okay, well, I've got earned income, so I can max out my IRA. Now the max out actually is 100% of your earned income, or $7,000 if you're younger than age 50. Add an extra $1,000 if you're age 50 or older, whichever is lower. And so if your earned income was just $3,000, then that's the max you can contribute to the IRA. And then the last thing that I would say to this, and you know where I'm going to go, is David, I would tell you to throw it in the Roth IRA. We don't know anything else about your situation, but you ask, can I contribute this to my traditional IRA? And you would contribute to the traditional IRA if you wanted to get the tax deduction. If you are retired and you're not working, I don't know the other sources of income or what your retirement income game plan is, but do you really need the tax deduction even if it's really appealing?
Yeah, I mean, that's taking your specific tax picture into account as you make the decision on IRA, traditional IRA or Roth IRA. Keep in mind also, we don't know anything about David's marital status, but if his spouse is still working and earning enough, that can allow him to do a spousal contribution. She would effectively be doing that for him. They may still be able to max out an IRA or a Roth for him, maybe do the same for her. There might be even more options on the table.
Okay, so that spousal IRA contribution, does that need to be made to a special spousal IRA account?
No, it doesn't.
It certainly sounds like it does, but no, we get that question a lot too. The spousal IRA or spousal Roth contribution just means that it's based on your spouse's earned income because you didn't have enough earned income or any earned income, still make the contribution to your own IRA or Roth IRA. Fantastic questions. A little bit of confusion there. We had to get into the weeds. Hopefully that helped you. That is all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, all of us at Korhorn Financial Group, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.